Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Talking About Birds, the only Cardinal podcast that, like John Mikolas, is clearly getting bored with the St. Louis Cardinals. Wow. My name is Nate Heininger, and I am joined, as always, by my co-host, Ben Samorka.
Shots fired, a friend of the pod, Nate. Wow.
If you have an idea for the opening bit, text or leave us a voicemail at 848-48-BIRDS. All right, Hambone, we did it. We're back. We went to the belly of the beast. We were mere feet from John Mikolas. And we've got a lot to talk about after that event. We hugged some fellow podcasters. We've got a lot to talk about. A lot of big show today, Ben. Big show today. But before we go into all of our coverage of the blogger and podcaster event that we went to this weekend, you have an event this upcoming weekend that we've talked a fair bit about on this show. And I assume it's some sort of, you lost the race a couple weeks ago, so now you're trying to get into a different type of race.
Wow.
Where you just get to sit the whole time. So, Hambo, can you, if someone is newer to the show, hasn't listened around this time last year, what is it that you're participating in this weekend?
Yeah, I'll do the quick elevator pitch. We are doing the 24 Hours of Lemons race. It is a play on Le Mans, which is an endurance style of racing that happens all over the world. Essentially, this is an organization that is very silly, and the rules are that you can spend no more than $500 on your car to purchase it. You can put money in roll cages and making it safe and all that good stuff. And we are supposed to race these buckets for 24 hours straight. So Saturday at noon, I am kicking off the race this year, which I did last year, which is scary. And it's when, if your car is going to blow up, it's either going to blow up in the first hour, I think they lose like 30 or 40% of cars in the first hour. And I'll be driving the first 90 minutes. So it's absolute chaos. And then we'll keep the car going for another 24 hours after that. I'm racing. Last year I raced in the Nissan Z car. And this year I will be racing in our 2001 Ford ZX2. It sounds slow, but let me tell you, in those corners, it's quite a bit of fun. And our theme this year, it's themed every year, and we try to go all out with the theme, is Pokemon. So we have dressed the Ford up to look like Pikachu. I am going to be wearing a Bulbasaur costume because if you're not starting your game with Bulbasaur, then you're trying to lose and you're stupid.
Wow.
Obviously,
clearly
the best first choice.
That's the hottest take we've had on this show. Bulbasaur starting Pokemon.
Obviously.
Charmander boy myself, but I get it.
Well, yeah, that explains a lot.
I'm fiery.
Out your
You got to earn my love. You got to earn my love, Ben.
Okay. So yeah, I'm doing that. We have kind of a block party on Friday before the race gets going. I'll be out there Friday pretty much all day to do tech and make sure that all of our safety gear is up to snuff. And you might get a kick out of this. I am making Pikachu sliders to give out to all the boys and girls in the paddock before the race happens.
Are these like sliders made of rat?
Yes. Yeah. It's Nutrium. Is that what they call rat meat? Nutrium?
Is it? Maybe.
At me on Twitter if I'm. I don't know if I'm right or wrong about that.
There's no way for us to know this.
I will not Google it. I refuse to. But no, it's. I'm doing. I think you'll like this. It's. I'm going to do Hawaiian rolls.
Okay.
A smash burger, a little bit of cheddar.
Yeah.
Some grilled onions, pickles, and then I'm putting 2 bugles on top of the burger to look like Pikachu ears, and then I'm putting 2 little squirts of ketchup on the top bun to look like his little red cheeks. And yeah, I'm going to try to make about 80 of those as people are walking around the paddock having beers and hanging out and getting to know everybody. I'll be working the grill.
Have you tasted this yet? I'm trying to think about a bugle on a burger. I guess that could be good.
So I was at Costco yesterday, and they had bugles, and then they also had Cinnamon Toast Crunch bugles. So obviously, I went with the Cinnamon Toast Crunch bugles because I thought it was hilarious. Is it going to be a good flavor combo? I don't know.
I feel like I'm going regular bugles if I'm looking for a little crunch on my slider. And Cinnamon Toast Crunch bugle sounds kind of horrible.
And that's why you're a coward and I'm a winner. So we'll see how it goes down. I have not taste tested these.
Well, I mean, it's a strategy though, because these are going to be going out to people who are essentially your competitors, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
Have we discussed poisoning the food you're giving out to people?
No. I think that might be against the spirit of the event, but I feel like it's right. I like your thought though. Yeah. That being said, I will tell you what, these people are crazy. I think that they would shit their pants while continuing to drive.
Well, you had, if I'm remembering from a year ago.
Yes, you are. Right? Yeah.
You had something similar to that did happen on your own team, and you almost exploded. Am I right on that?
Sort of. So if you're eating food while listening to this, I apologize. I'll try to make this quick as well. But one of our new drivers, our younger drivers, was quite nervous. It's nerve-wracking to be out on a track with 70 other racers, as you can probably imagine.
Yeah, and they're like 12, 13 years old, right?
Yeah. The track is about 2.3 miles, 2 and a third of a mile. 2 miles and a third of a mile. What am I? 2.3 miles.
2 and 1/3 mile.
And
2.33333 miles.
It's turns left and right straightaways. It's not just a simple oval track. Is really all I'm trying to say.
Rights.
Well, it's not an oval track. Is all I'm trying to illustrate right now. So I would say if you're not feeling great in the tummy department, it is like being on a roller coaster for 90 minutes. And our boy was crushing ham sammies before he got in the car. I think just nervously eating. And he's driving the car for about 30 minutes, maybe 40. And he calls in and says, "Hey, guys, I need to swap out. I'm not feeling too well." We're all sitting around, not in our fire suits. So it takes a minute to get dressed up to go to the pit lane. And we're saying, "Oh, hey, give us a minute. We'll get ready and we'll swap you out." Okay. As he calls back on the radio. We're kind of we're lollygagging, to be completely honest. And he calls in, "I have to get off the track right now." So by this point, we are running around to the hot lane, and we see the guy in the car leaning out of the car, vomiting onto the to the track. Just, I mean, the sun behind him just spraying. It was kind of magical, although horrifying. We run over to get the next guy in the car because it's all timed, and we're trying to win, and we're trying to clean up the vomit. It's all inside the car. He only got some of it on the street. And I'm asking the guy who's about to drive next, "Hey, do you want to take a break and we can clean this out?" And he goes, "No, go." So I pull down to tighten his shoulder strap, and I shit you not, this is so disgusting. Like ham and cheese and bread that was partially digested, like squeezes out between my fingers as I'm ratcheting down his shoulder strap.
I'm just running into the race lane at this point. Just end it now.
And it's like these cars, there's no AC. He's just driving around a hot ham sandwich mobile for 90 minutes during that stint. It was vile.
Well, I'm so glad you're back at it this year after such a success story last year.
We did pretty well last year, even though, in the last 24, the car almost exploded. We don't need to talk about that right now, but it's not going to explode this year. And I think I'm going to get our team. I think we're going to get top 30 finish, and I'm going to feel really good about that.
Okay. You heard it here first, folks. Top 30. Yeah. Bulbasaur is going to vine whip his way around.
Hey, see, you know Bulba.
Of course I know Bulba.
Go.
Bulbasaur.
Okay.
It's pretty good, right?
All right. Yeah. I liked it.
All right. Well, good luck. Don't die. Win the race.
Yeah.
Poison your enemies.
I bought a new inflatable mattress for my truck. I'm very excited about that as well.
That sounds cool. I don't understand how that's relevant to the...
I sleep in my truck during the race.
Okay.
Yeah.
Someone's driving the truck around the racetrack and you're sleeping in the back.
Yeah. Yes.
Well, proud of you for being
it's
able to move
important to me. You might not care about my comfort, my level of comfort in my sleeping, but it's important to me.
It's good for you to have alternative solutions to where you're going to sleep. Assuming at some point Mary's gonna kick you out, so you need to have like a truck to lay your
You
weary
think she would
head
give
in.
me the truck at least? She'd let me keep it?
I bet she wants nothing to do with your truck.
That's fair.
Yeah. All right, let's talk about the blogger event. So we were invited to participate in something like the 13th.
They begged us, Nate.
Yeah, it was quite embarrassing, frankly.
I got flued out.
You got flued out. Not true. But you did fly out.
I did.
We were invited to the 13th, something like that, blogger and now podcaster event. It was held in one of the Legends suites in Busch for the Saturday game against the Rockies.
We had Wayno was on our wall. Was that the Legend that they were referencing?
Oh, yeah. I didn't even think about that. I guess so. I mean, it was really nice, at least as far as the Cardinal, what they offered. Right when you walk in, we met one of the media directors, super, super nice guy. We're in a little suite, total open bar and all inclusive as far as like ballpark food goes, which of course, I was going at. Highlight of the day, I burnt my hand on nacho cheese.
Idiot.
So that was cool. I
think it should be clear that first you said, "Hey, look what I'm about to do," thinking that you're the first human in existence to put nacho cheese on a bratwurst.
I did not think I was the first to do it.
And if I remember correctly, I told you were going to burn your hand, and then you did.
Yeah, probably, but still, nothing's gonna change my world. And I bunned up a brat, stuck it under the nacho cheese dispenser, and promptly poured it directly onto my fingers, holding the bratwurst.
Idiot.
It was hot. It was really hot.
It's molten cheese.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, we're in a room of people who are much smarter than us. Probably should be networking and making connections. And Nate's just scolding himself with hot free cheese.
My third bratwurst, and
all just cheese free.
Yeah. I kept asking. I was getting a little uncomfortable. Are you sure this cheese is free? I asked John Mazalek. But anyway, it was a probably group of about 40 people or so, which was a blend of the bloggers and podcasters, as well as everyone got a +1. So we had a real cousin brigade. I brought my brother, and Ben brought his brother. So we just had cousins left and right, like a Spider-Man meme pointing at each other being cousins, which I think was fun for them, although they mostly just sat in the corner and were stuck in conversation with other people who thought that they were bloggers or something. So that was fun. And then after about half hour of hanging out in this club area, John Mazalek comes in and sort of posts up on a little chair and takes about 40 minutes or so of questions.
Yeah, I'll shout out Viva Alberto's on their podcast feed. They posted the entire press conference. I think it was about 50 minutes.
Okay.
So I encourage you to go check that out if you are curious.
Yeah, and on that, you can hear our very own Ben Samorka asking a question and getting just a ton of fist bumps and high fives from the bloggers around us, because you got the only affirmative from John Mazalek that I heard in the day in the form of a gentle, "Great question," which I'm sure gentle. Was maybe the highlight of your life so far. Of course, a low bar.
Of that 60-minute period, it was pretty good. But I think I talked to you about this while I was in town. 35-year hot streak, baby.
Never take an L. That's what we're doing here, baby. So I took a bunch of notes about the actual content of what Mazalek talked about, and I think we can dig in that. But before we talk about the substance of it, what was your sort of takeaway from the event itself?
Yeah, I mean, it's unbelievably cool. The fact that we're just fans who had the gumption and the stupidity to do this weekly show, and the fact that because people for some reason listen to this, and we keep doing it. We got invited. Is amazing in its own right.
Yeah.
Meeting other people, actually getting to see Kyle and Daniel and us, a bunch of the other people in real life was incredible.
Yeah,
and
we
just
very
like
successfully made Daniel C70 really uncomfortable by aggressively demanding hugs, which
he
was
flinched at my hug, which he had to know it was coming. Like,
Yeah.
I feel like I've warned him.
Uh-huh.
But it happened. So
Mhm.
so that right there was special, and just being in like the little community was special. And then from the John Mozeliak part, I thought that he was extremely generous with his time. I thought that the little salvo at the top was kind of cool. I felt like I was a real journalist for 10 minutes or so, which was fun. And then I also thought that he was not, or I guess I felt as though that he was actually thinking about the questions that were being asked and was answering them as well as he could. Now, did I agree with everything that he said? No. Did we as a group go fairly easy on him? I would say yes. But I think the event was more about the access and kind of being able to have that time, with not only with the other people in the world that we're in, but kind of feel like we're a real deal for a couple hours on a Saturday, which it was great. I had no complaints. I can't wait to do it again. I hope we get to go again.
Yeah.
We may be going to the winter warm up to do something similar. We'll see what happens there. Obviously, that's way down the line, but yeah, very very exciting stuff.
Yeah, I was I'd say it was pretty externally validating. I think you and I chatted about this a little bit. Like, so much of podcasting and blogging and just any sort of fan created content, you're making it and you're just putting it out. And we're fortunate in our listener base. We have some really awesome listeners, and we have our little community in the Patreon and whatnot. So we do have some like reciprocal interaction. Reciprocation.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, reciprocal interaction. But so much of this show is just, me and Ben talking to each other, putting it out, and then just like, all right, well, there it goes. Hopefully, hopefully people are listening. And so to have the actual Cardinals, one way or another, we don't really know how they found us and anyone else in the room. But to actually, like, this stupid show resulting in us having an hour in the room with the Cardinals president of baseball operations, not to be like all bootlicky about their that sort of thing. It was pretty cool. And yeah, I think your read on Mozeliak is the same as mine. Like, I think we all in the community have been pretty down on him and most of the senior level management of the Cardinals for quite a while now. But that despite that, he still chose to get in a room with all of us. Yep. And he was pretty candid about that. And about how most of the people in the room were probably pretty mad at him or did not like him right now. And, it was, I at least appreciate the self-awareness there.
Before we asked any questions, he basically said, like, I'm probably not long for this job.
Yeah, well, that was one of my biggest notes. And I guess we can jump into some of the specifics from the interview, which was pretty wide ranging, as you can imagine, 20 something different people throwing questions at him. But like, one of my biggest takeaways, the amount of times,
but only one question was
a great question. The amount of times that he said, "I'm about done with all this," really stood out to me. Like, early and often, he was repeating it. We didn't really get too hard into like win or anything like that. But it was pretty obvious. He even said in the next couple of years. And there was a whole bit about Chaim Bloom that he went in on. And my reading between the lines on this was that it certainly felt like he was hinting at Chaim Bloom being prepped to come in as some senior level actual operating role, not just like advisor or whatever, whether that's Pobo or GM or something alongside Gersh. Once again, Gersh not mentioned one time in this entire thing. So I don't know. Of course, no one asked any questions about Gersh, but also Mozeliak
What
said,
would you ask? Is
I don't
Gersh
know.
still alive?
Yeah, what does
Like
Gersh do?
a
Would be, I
Shelley
guess, my
Miskovich
question.
type situation. Like, can you prove to me that Michael Gersh is alive?
Yeah, so I don't know. But my read on it was obviously Mozeliak's going to be gone as far as he'll obviously still be with the operation to some degree, but his
Right.
role in the management of the on the field product is maybe even over at the end of this year, especially if the Cardinals miss the playoffs. I'm sure that'll happen. But Chaim Bloom, has been involved in a lot of projects, and we're supposed to see the results of those projects here pretty soon. And that
I did think that was pretty interesting, and I think if I remember right, Kyle was the one that asked the specific question about Chaim Bloom and the idea of or Mo kind of alluded to that he has been helpful already, that he has been making an impact, but that the thing that he's really been focusing on, we haven't seen the results of, nor has Mozeliak. It's something that they're going to download about at the end of the season and work on in the winter, which I was excited to hear about because obviously the season isn't going exactly the way you want immediate results, but hearing that from his mouth really made me feel encouraged about what might be coming in the future.
Yeah. There was a funny little moment right at the beginning. The first question came from a kid, which is nice. There were a fair amount of kids in the room, a handful, which is, you got to think what a cool experience for those who brought their kids. They asked Mo what the hardest part of his job is.
Yeah.
And his answer was, I think partly the truth and partly an attempt at a bit, but he basically said that his hardest part of his job is managing the weather.
Yeah.
Which was funny. And I could imagine that if you've been doing this for almost 30 years, it's that sort of stuff that probably drives you crazy the most, more so than the actual big picture running of an entire organization. He seemed pretty serious when he said the weather drives him crazy.
I mean, I'm sure acquiring Ryan Fernandez is fun, and then having to make your machinations to address a rained out game is really not fun. And that's like, Mo was he funny? He's not funny, but he was lighter than I expected him to be, which I appreciated.
He tried to make jokes, and he got some laughs. He got a few laughs,
some
chuckles.
Yeah. Laughs are maybe too generous, but that doesn't really matter.
But yeah, it was pretty, saying the hardest part about your job is managing rain delays is something that only someone who's been doing it forever would actually say, because
maybe too long.
Yeah, right. All the hard shit has become mundane to him,
right?
And so it's it's saying that the worst part of your job is traffic.
Yeah, I have to imagine, while there is some truth to that, but having an end-of-season conversation with Mike Schilt and firing him at the table is probably a little more unfun and difficult than managing the intricacies of weather and roster management.
Running through my notes here, another thing he mentioned that I found intriguing, something we talk a lot about on the show. He, I think, pretty clearly recognized that or stated that fan access to the sport is currently in a difficult situation. It's a real problem for the game, which I was happy to hear, because he obviously has a hand in the future of that in his role. And so for him to say fan access to the game on TV is a problem, I was happy to hear that. Now, I don't know necessarily how big of a problem he views it, but at least him saying that was stood out to me. And he said that he believes the MLB TV streaming option is the path to going forward, of which I agree completely. And he mentioned that the uncertainty around all of this is also causing organizations, it sounds like the Cardinals included, to be a little more conservative than they might have been in the past, because they just don't know what one of their main revenue streams, thinking back to the multi-billion-dollar Bally's deal and whatnot. They just don't know where that's going to go. And so there's just some general conservatism across the board while that stuff gets figured out. And that makes sense. I don't think that's new news or anything, but it was just nice to hear Mozeliak specifically say he's pro the streaming package and knows it's a big problem.
It would not surprise me at all if Mo, once he retires from his Cardinals post, goes and works for Major League Baseball directly in some like Theo Epstein type capacity of, improving the game, making it more accessible, whatever it is. That would not surprise me at all. I feel like he's kind of at that status where he could just walk in the front door and they'd give him a job.
Yeah. And Manafort is like Bill DeWitt was one of the main drivers of getting Manafort into that position.
Manfred?
What am I saying? Who's Manafort?
I have no idea.
Who am I thinking of? Well, whatever.
Dick Manfred is the owner of the Rockies.
Maybe that's what I'm.
Maybe you're just an idiot.
Maybe. I got my burnt cheese hand, and it's.
Oh my god! Is that where your freaking brain is? Or you
take my cheese hand,
idiot? Manfred, yeah,
Manfred.
And thank Bill DeWitt for that.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. So I don't know. There's obviously some sway there, and I can see that happening. I don't know. I suspect Mozeliak, the way he talks about everything, it kind of seems like he wants less right now, and
I think he probably wants less of us, people like us right now. I'm sure. He's taken an L and a half so far over the past 2 years. So yeah.
I thought that the only moment that we saw any sort of resistance from Mozeliak came from one of Kyle's questions, talking about Kyle talked about it on our show with you a month or so ago, and I've seen it in other places too, that pitchers in the Cardinals system have complained to him and to other people about development, how they're handled, how they're treated, and just their overall career growth as pitchers in the Cardinal department, which makes a lot of sense when, again, you consider that the Cardinals have developed basically no starting pitching in the last 10 years. So you can imagine a lot of these guys that are early in their career are probably unhappy about it and see where it's going. And Mozeliak kind of just said, no, you're wrong about that to Kyle. And it was the only time that I saw him kind of get a little tenser, and he kind of fired back at Kyle a little bit, which was nice. And then apparently Kyle has been going to this for years, has developed this sort of that sort of relationship with Mozeliak, and they went and shook hands afterwards. And I asked him if Mozeliak's hands are silky smooth, and he said pillowy. So that's some breaking news on the show. You're not going to get that anywhere else.
No one else would report on that. You were 100% right.
Yeah, I of course couldn't shake his hand because I had it wrapped in big cartoon bandages from my cheese incident.
Yeah, and we were asking, I think, specifics along that line, and Kyle maybe the spearhead of that, but the idea of shouldn't we be giving individual players more individual care and response and plans? And Mo kind of his pushback to that wholly was kind of well, we're trying to do that. We're not. He didn't really concede to the fact that they're not successful at it, but he did acknowledge that yes, that is ideal. That is what I would like to do, but didn't really concede that we probably could have handled Zach Gallen better. He basically said Zach Gallen was in AA, which I think Kyle corrected him under his breath. He was in AAA, and they just didn't know him as well as they should have. And Zach Gallen is the Game 1 starter for the World Series last year, and everybody knows what Zach Gallen has done since then. And you kind of have to take the L. I do know this has been well documented, but talking to Mo about the players that have gotten away, the Gallons, the Garcias, the Alcantaras, whoever else, is definitely a point that he does not seem comfortable chatting about openly, or at least with folks like us.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you're basically saying hey, you were wrong about something. You want to talk about that a little bit, But he did say well, you're going to be wrong sometimes. I got that one wrong. He talked about the challenge of the role. He spent quite a while talking about the challenge of the role of the manager position,
Yeah.
referencing Ali Marmol. Nobody asked a single challenging question about Ali Marmol. He kind of brought this up on his own. Almost it seemed like forward defense, the best defense is a good offense, I guess.
Yeah.
And he basically like challenged everyone in the room that like managing is not as easy as everyone thinks it is. If you think it is, let me know. I'll put you in at the Gulf Coast League and we'll see how you do.
Yeah. I was joking around with your brother after he said that, like, how badly those minor league players would just eat me alive if I were to walk. It would, like, I can't even imagine how poorly that would go. And he's right. And I think, like, obviously there are people that don't like Ali Marmol. There are people who don't like even any manager for any team for any reason, and that's totally valid. But I do think that we and the most of that room has a little bit more of a nuanced take on Ali Marmol. He definitely could have handled the media and the players better last year, but last year was bad for many reasons. I think he's grown and he's doing a better job this year. So I don't know if there's really much I need to ask. I think the real problem is, like, why is Nolan Arenado and Paul Goldschmidt not hitting? That's not Ali Marmol's fault. I promise you that. I don't know whose it is other than theirs, but yeah, that's the problem.
Yeah. There was quite a lot of discussion about the pitching lab that has been in discussion forever now, several years now. I mean, I know COVID had a huge impact on its development, but obviously it's been a few years now since that has really impacted stuff on the ground to that degree. So there was some questions around, like, why is this still taking forever? Mozeliak more or less said that they've run into really bureaucratic issues with everything, location, like zoning,
licensing, and permitting issues.
Yeah, like things that we forget are a part of building buildings and just the work that goes into it. You don't normally hear about that being that long of a delay, but I don't know. All we have is what he said. But ultimately he said ultimately. That I just said ultimately. I'm going to talk about that in a second. But he said that we should see groundbreaking in next May.
Yeah.
So bit of news.
My question that I eventually asked him was kind of around that same thought process, and where that originated from is because I was kind of thinking, like, why doesn't an organization like the St. Louis Cardinals, who have oodles and noodles of cash, just go buy Tread Athletics, just acquire Tread Athletics, bring it in,
buy Driveline.
Yeah, so like, or go poach 9 coaches from that place and say, hey, do you want to be in the big leagues? Like, let's go. Like, that's an easy sell. Like, even if acquiring something like Tread Athletics is a few $1 million, $10 million, like, you would think that the ROI would be massive because you're bringing that all in house and you're taking it away from other people. So that's where my question kind of originated, and then I kind of adjusted it to be a little more specific at the Cardinals. But I do wonder,
why don't you? What's I don't know. I mean, I'm sure there's some degree that I bet every team has probably tried, and some to be bought, you have to be willing to be bought. And I wonder if Driveline and Tread Athletics and whatnot see their position in the market is too valuable and they don't want to be bought. I mean, everybody has a price, but at some point you probably do think, okay, we can't buy Driveline, but we could build our own, know, which is what the Cardinals seem to be trying to do. But why don't you kind of talk through the question you asked and the answer that you got?
Yeah. So I just asked, essentially, with the rise in pitching and hitting labs like Tread and Driveline, is that something that the Cardinals front office and Mo in particular prescribe to players in the offseason? And then kind of what I was just talking about, do they think about bringing that technology in-house to any degree, which brought us back to the pitching lab. And he basically responded saying, like, he's not a fan of those things. And he's not a fan of those things basically because it's like you have he didn't use this analogy, but I'm going to use it. You have a car and you're working on your car, you're trying to get it ready, and then you loan it out to somebody all winter, and then the car comes back and you don't really know what you're getting back. You don't know if they've changed the oil, they don't know if what kind of miles they put on it, anything at all. And you're kind of learning at that.
They might have painted it to look like a Bulbasaur.
Whatever may have happened to it. So he's basically talking about like the lack of control and the lack of liability. Like Tread Athletics, all they have, like their motivating factor is to get that player throwing hard. They don't have to worry about the long-term health effects. They don't have to worry about this player's value to the organization. It is just focused on that one player, and that's essentially where his issue came from. And he talked about how he doesn't really blame players, because I think the analogy he actually used was, if you're in your professional life and you don't feel like you're getting enough attention from your manager and you're not getting yourself promoted, then you might seek outside help. And it's the same thing. If a player feels like they are not getting enough attention from inside of the organization, these guys are extremely motivated. They're going to go find it somewhere else.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. It's pretty interesting. And I at first I was a little surprised by the answer, but it does make sense to me. And he said, if they go and get hurt at one of these things too, it becomes a liability question as well. Whereas if they are hurt under the care of the Cardinals, well, then it was their own activity, part of the Cardinals, and
Right.
and they're responsible for taking care of them. But if they get hurt at Driveline or whatever, what does that mean? And it just like it negatively impacts the Cardinal organization with none of the positives. So it is pretty complicated, and you can see why in his position, it's kind of one of those things where like there's no one's necessarily wrong here. You can absolutely see why a player would go and do that, and we've heard tons of success stories from it. But you could also understand why someone in John Mozeliak's position would really prefer that you not go and do those things.
Right.
But they're not going to stop them. They haven't made any sort of rules or anything against it.
Yeah, and you think like exactly what he said. It would be kind of silly because like Riley O'Brien might not be who Riley O'Brien is. Now, obviously, he's hurt, and that might be part of Driveline's fault. It's kind of it's hard to prescribe blame there because pitchers do be breaking, but you kind of take the good with the bad. And obviously, like he even referenced, like he's got an 18-year-old kid, and his kid tried going to one of these labs and tried increasing his velo from a pitching standpoint, and it didn't work.
Yeah,
so
didn't work.
It's not a magic bullet that can just go kill any mechanical or throwing issues you may have. There's a lot more to it than just go here, get better.
Yeah, because if that were the case, then there would be absolutely everybody would be at it every single winter. But we really only hear about the ones that it works out.
Tread Athletics isn't posting about, we had a Andre Palante and his arm fell off. Come on down to Tread and we'll help you out.
Just a few more notes. So Mozeliak talked a fair bit about Jordan Walker. Nothing necessarily new, but what I thought was interesting is he talked about him in comparison to Mason Wynn. And he said, sitting here a year ago, if you would have talked about the trajectories and the expectations of Wynn versus Walker, we'd be in a pretty opposite situation than we are right now, which I thought was interesting. And he said one of the benefits, though, of last year, he said, he repeated like multiple times how horrible last year was, which, Durdoy, but still, he was saying it. He said one of the only sort of, nice things about last year is that they did get Mason Wynn up earlier than you would have expected, and he got plenty of time to develop at the major league level. And he says that is part of why they think Wynn is having so much success this year, and he sees just like all of us, I think, at this point, but he sees Wynn as like a superstar, a future superstar in the league. And the way in which they were able to develop him, and obviously Wynn's own work and whatnot, like last year really worked out in that regard. So, which is true. It's very true. I think we talked about that a fair bit last year while going through the horrible stuff. It's like, well, at least Wynn's up here and, getting that development time. Another note that I thought was interesting, something you and I kind of speculated about, and to hear him say it directly was interesting. When referring to the catcher position, he said that, we got complacent as an organization around catcher development because of Yadier Molina. And It's like, yeah, I mean, it is.
We saw that.
Yeah, we saw that. And it's honestly, though, like, I do kind of get it. If you only have so many resources to go in a certain direction and you have Yachty, like, are you going to spend a lot of time and money developing more catchers when you just know you're just creating that backfill that we saw for like 10 years of like, here's the future catcher of the future. And it's like, nope, it's just still Yachty,
Yeah.
So not a lot to take away from that, but like something I think you and I had talked about a fair amount of like that, like it's sort of like the great man theory too. Like we don't have to do anything because we've got this guy and he'll just take care of it for us forever.
And generally, I am empathetic to that, and I understand that. But when Yadier Molina is 36 and you don't start thinking about the next phase, that's where I think it's fair to be critical. But no, I get what he's saying.
Yeah, and to be fair, like there wasn't the only time the Cardinals have had like mediocre catching in the last 5 years has been when Yachty was in decline.
Right.
But they were still going to play him every day. It's still Yachty, So like as soon as Yachty was actually gone, went and got Willson Contreras, who's been great, On the Yachty note, he said that like someone asked, "Where's Yachty? What's up?" Thought he was going to be a part of the organization. Mozeliak would not go into it, of course, but he basically said, family things are keeping Yachty away from the game right now. The door is open for when he wants to come back.
Yeah.
And I thought that was interesting. I've seen a fair amount of people in the online and whatnot saying things like, oh, Yachty's trying to stay away because the organization's bad now, or some like putting a lot of assumptions into why the Yachty is not a part of the thing right now. And it's like, that's such a huge leap from a guy who has spent his entire career with the Cardinals. And
that's not how players work.
Yeah. And knowing, Mozeliak, like he wouldn't go into it at all, but clearly there's something with Yachty and his family that, he feels the need to attend to. So everyone just leave him alone, know.
He'll be back at some point.
Yep. And then finally, I started keeping track of how many times Mozeliak said ultimately in a single interview.
It was constant.
So I got to 15 times, but I wasn't counting at the beginning. It was only after a little while I was like, I need to start tracking this.
I mean, ultimately, I think you did your best.
Ultimately,
there's a lot
tried.
Flying it's hard to track, but I think ultimately you did a great job.
I appreciate that. Ultimately, I feel like I did a great job too.
Yeah.
Any last notes or thoughts on the whole thing, Blogger and Podcaster Day?
It was great to be back in Busch Stadium. It's been several years since I've been there. It was great to crush Budweiser's with the homies. It was great to put faces to names. I had a really fun conversation with Stu Stiles, who's a great Twitter follow. He does those amazing scorebooks if you aren't following him for whatever reason. I talked to several other people, watched the game. Seeing a baseball game with you, even though I hate your guts so much, it feels right. It's always nice to be in the ballpark together. And just being surrounded by like-minded, freaks was great. And it's crazy to me that we were able to do all that. This has happened right before the game because I thought, I know we have an inclusive suite with unlimited food and booze, but I had to go get some Bogart's barbecue before I went. So just shout out Bogart's. That really just started my day off right.
Yeah.
It was all together a great St. Louis day and had a blast and can't wait to do it again. I hope we get to do it again.
It also explained why your brother was rolling you up to Busch Stadium after.
So I will shout out Jake, who is my little brother. Who he's not a baseball freak like us, but I thought it would be great to have him with us. And he kept bragging about how he's going to do a 999 in the because it was free beer and everything like that. And apparently this is some meme that has just totally missed me. But it's 9 beers, 9 hot dogs, and 9 innings, which I do think that we should try for the podcast. I don't know if I could do it.
No, I'm certain that I could not.
You don't think you could, really?
I don't think I could. I can eat, and those are two things I can eat well. But I think, especially with the pace of play at this point,
it's 2.5 hours, 9 beers, 9 hot dogs.
Yeah, but I mean, you are expected to do like if I could do like 3 hot dogs, wait like a half an hour, then 3 hot dogs, wait I think
Yeah.
I'd be a little bit better at it, but having to like if you're keeping with the rules of it as I understand them,
Yeah.
it is like every inning you have to complete.
I think that's the proper way to do it.
Yeah. And there are innings that are like 8 minutes long now.
Okay.
So but I do like it. I like the idea of it. And I was bummed that he didn't really commit to it other than joking about it the whole time.
Well, I will also say, so before Jake and his girlfriend got to Bogart's, they met me there for lunch. I ordered them some half a slab of ribs and some burnt ends, and they were eating that. And then Jake went and got a pastrami sandwich. So I don't know what he was thinking. I don't know if it would have been physically possible, but he attempted.
Yeah. This was my second game of the week, and I went to 2 of the 4 Rockies games. I saw both of the losers. And I also, so I've been to 3 games this year. And now 2 of the 3, what essentially would have been a game-winning Cardinal home run was robbed right in front of me both times.
Yeah.
We saw a Newt Bar home run robbed right in front of us at the game earlier this year, and then we had the home run robbery right in front of us on the Thursday night game.
You're the problem.
Yeah, I got my deeply stupid, but I love it, Jordan Walker Skywalker bobblehead. I also got one for C70. I have to mail it to him. And then we got our Larry Walker bobbleheads on Saturday.
In St. Louis.
Yeah, I've got yours. So on the Thursday night game, I got nachos, as I do. And I don't know if it was because they were getting ready to close. We were there like right before last call. But the woman, this was the biggest heap of nachos that I've ever gotten at a ballpark. When she handed it over, I said, "You're an artist," which probably was demoralizing, but I meant it seriously. It was incredible. And I could barely eat the whole thing. Brandon helped me with a bunch of it. Friend of the show, Brandon, went to be I needed a body to collect an extra bobblehead for C70.
Oh, wow. So you guys had fun, it sounds like.
Yeah, it was great. Brandon and I had a great time at the game, despite it being a loser.
Yeah.
Anyway, so yeah, thanks again to the Cardinals and everybody for hanging out with us at this event. It was really, really cool. So let's go ahead and talk about some Cardinal specific news that's happened over the last week. Ben, what do you want to chat about first?
Yeah, big news on the health front. Willson Contreras has been cleared to resume baseball activity after a CT scan revealed good news regarding his surgically repaired forearm. Contreras has already caught a bullpen for Andre Palante, which is kind of shocking, and has resumed hitting as of this recording. Contreras, in an interview with MLB.com, indicated that he hopes to return to the big league action by the end of the month, telling reporters that it won't be July. So I think that is great news for obvious reasons. If Willson can get back and even be 75% of what he was doing before he went out, this could really launch this team. I think that Andre Pages has been not great, but great behind the plate, but not great offensively. And Ivan Herrera has had fits and starts and is hitting for average. Willson Contreras is arguably the best player on this team right now with our position player. I'll be clear, with kind of the step backs that Paulie and Arenado have made this year. So getting your potentially best player, second best player back.
It's like making a trade, baby.
Making a trade, baby. But obviously huge news.
Yeah, I mean, and Contreras would be coming back to, I think, a team with a bit of a different vibe than when he left. We've seen a bunch of other guys step up and being able to slot him right back into the lineup, particularly in DH, where it's not been great. There was the game last night where when the bench became really, really important. A lot of key at bats late in the game, where you're finding yourself, or like Jose Fermin is pinch hitting. Yeah. And Michael Ciani is being left in on a major major critical at bat. You can see that the Cardinals' depth has been pretty rough from an offensive standpoint. I think we all knew that when when your bench consists of mostly dudes approaching 40 who are there to be, emotional support players rather than, offensive contributors. So being able to add in some more depth at the top, I think will be pretty significant for this team.
Yeah, when you were projecting Gorman and Goldschmidt, Arenado, and even Donnie is hitting below average right now, and Lars Nootbaar being healthy, and Willson Contreras being Willson Contreras, you can stomach having Matt Carpenter and Brandon Crawford on the bench, and maybe a Jose Fermin appearance every once in a while, whatever that looks like. And, but none of those things are happening right now. And it does make those bench spots look a lot more important than we felt that they were a couple of months ago. It's a point of frustration for me at this point. And we only have 6 weeks to the trading deadline. When are they going to make the change, if they are going to make the change?
Yeah. And I think we're going to talk about the trade deadline here in a couple minutes, but it will be, this is, very obvious statement here, but it will be very, very good for the Cardinals to have Willson Contreras back. That said, I think it is helpful to remember that wrist injuries often are pretty rough for offensive production.
It's a forearm, though.
Yeah.
And I mean,
that's true.
He's a muscle-bound freak. I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm trying to be optimistic. If it was like those the bird bones injuries always freak me out. But I don't know. Maybe I'm not
talking about bird bones.
Bird bones. That should be the other show. We talking about bird bones.
Talking about bird bones.
So
that should be the other show.
I don't know what I meant by that. So John Mozeliak, in our chat with him on Saturday, he did talk about the fact that just nobody from AAA has grabbed that fifth starter spot, and they'll have one good game and they won't follow it up with another, and then somebody else will have a good game and they won't follow it up with another. And he alluded to the idea that is where he sees the help coming from, is very specifically the AAA starting staff. Yeah. Whether that be Simra Bursay, Zach Thompson, Kloffenstein, Graceffa, McGreevy, Victor Santos is probably in that mix even to some degree. All that to be said, Steven Matz is scheduled to make a second rehab start. That happened yesterday in AA as he works his way back from the lower lat strain. What are we going to do if and when Steven Matz rejoins the big league ball club, Nathan Heiniger?
Man, I've rode the Matz hype train so many. I feel like I was the conductor on that Matz hype train for the last 2 years straight. And it's hard to keep that going.
That train's off the rails, if you ask me.
Like a retired train, it's off the rails. And I don't know.
Like a 140-year-old joke you just told?
I don't know. It doesn't matter.
It's good.
I think he probably goes to the bullpen.
Yeah. Where has he been successful in a Cardinals uniform?
Bullpen.
And where do the Cardinals need help right now?
Everywhere, but bullpen.
But if you can replace John King with the Steven Matz, I feel pretty good about that.
Yeah. And I know we love to hate on John King, but he actually had a pretty good run there for a little while. I mean, his stuff makes
Smoke and mirrors, my friend. If you buy it, I got a beach house in Wisconsin I'm going to sell you.
Wow, hey, you got a full of cheese curds.
I guess there are a lot of lakes in Wisconsin. I got a beach house in Nevada I'm going to sell you.
There you go. Yeah. I think he goes in the bullpen, and I think they keep throwing Palante until he either sticks or gets blown up, and then they cycle in someone else from the minors and keep trying. Or Mozeliak said they expect to potentially add a depth piece fifth starter via
Lester
trade.
Type is how I read that.
Yes, but the standard, what the Cardinals do every every single trade deadline.
Yeah.
Someone who will slot right in with Lancelin and Gibson.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of even. I don't even know who.
Yeah, I'd have to look into it a little bit more.
Jose
But hey,
Quintana is probably available.
Yeah, probably. Let's go positive for a second. How about Miles Mikolas?
How about Miles Mikolas? He was pretty deep in a no-hitter earlier this week.
Yeah,
he's looking pretty special. Miles has been awesome. Over his last 5 starts, he has thrown 30 innings with a 2.7 ERA. He's walking less than 2 per 9. He's doing his usual strikeout thing where he's not getting that many guys out. But I will say, just from an eyeball test, he's looking good to me. And the breaking balls have been special. I think his curveball, especially recently, has looked a lot better than we've seen it in recent memory. The slider is clearly his best pitch. And I don't know how closely you're watching that attempt at the no-hitter earlier this week, Nate, but he was peppering in the high sinker, which I think is kind of brilliant. The idea that you're taking, a 2-seam sinker, whatever, throwing it above the zone. I am assuming the hitter thinks it's a 4-seam. It's going to be above the zone, but then it darts down 5-6 inches at the last minute to catch the strike zone. And I think we saw 2 or 3, maybe 4 looking strikeouts. No, I think it was just 3 looking strikeouts on a high sinker, which is a pitch that it makes sense having watched it, but I would not be prescribing. I wouldn't be thinking that is a pitch I would be asking Miles Mikolas to throw at any point, but I'm wondering if this is a new look Miles. If this is a planned attack, if you're going hard on the 2 breaking balls and throwing that high sinker, and then obviously mixing in your other 18 pitches that he has. But I was very, very impressed, and the numbers don't lie. He's been great.
Yeah. Now the Pirates offense, not the best, but there's some guys on that team that can hit. And I think I'd been following it. And I finally went to turn it on when he was in the 7th, and it was a no-hitter. He had actually carried a perfect game into the 6th. Before he walked someone, and then in the 7th, I finally turn on the game, and they have a leadoff triple.
Thanks for that.
It was, if you've watched the game, some defensive heroics and still some good pitching got them out of it. It was only one game, Hambone, so I don't want to get ahead of myself here. But the play that Arenado made. Wait,
before you say this, I fully agree. But keep going. I'm excited you brought this up.
The play that Arenado made and his approach at the plate that night.
Yeah.
It's early.
Yeah.
But that's the first time in a little while, maybe this season, I've been like, there he is. That's Arenado.
Nathan,
is he back?
I couldn't agree with you more. I had the exact same thought. I was thinking, did he have a cup of coffee today? Like, the energy is there. He stretched that single into a double. He looked great on defense. I could not agree with you more. He absolutely looked like he had some electricity. And I agree, for the first time all year. I don't know what happened, but fully co-sign your thought there.
Cardinals still lost, so hopefully that didn't but a damper on that energy. But like, it was really fun. That was one of even though the Cardinals lost, it was one of the tightest games that we've seen them play. And after a run of errors and just sloppy defense, it was really nice to see all of that last night, even though it ended up in a loss. I mean, if you're losing because Ryan Helsley doesn't have it one night, like that's just how baseball goes. He's been incredible all year.
And Paul Skeens is making you look bad for 6 innings like that. Yeah. Sometimes it's just a hard day at the office.
Yeah. Lot of coverage on the Cardinal fans giving Skeens a standing ovation as he left the mound. I thought it was kind of fun,
Yeah.
You don't like it?
It wouldn't be me.
Yeah.
I'll cheer for a good play from the other team, but I'm not going to stand up and cheer for Paul Skeens just making our team look dumb for an hour and a half.
That's fair. All right, let's wrap this up. The Cardinals are currently tied for 3rd and last place. The 3-way tie you wrote it in a funny way. It's a 3-way tie for last place.
Yeah.
and how many? Let's see, how many games back from first are we?
We're seven. Yeah.
7 games back. So obviously not a great number, but it's still only June. Absolutely surmountable. I think probably more importantly for the discussion that we're about to have, they are technically only a half game back of a wild card spot. Now they share that half game back with the Reds, the Cubs, because as we mentioned, that we're tied with both of them, and Arizona. And then Pittsburgh is in the spot and San Francisco is in the other spot. And then you've got Washington only a half game back of us.
Yeah.
So there's currently 7 teams all within a game of the wild card spot. And so the question is, do we see the Cardinals as buyers or sellers? And Mozeliak mentioned this a little bit. He currently sees them as buyers. But my read on it is that unless there's an absolute tank in the next 6 weeks, because they're only a half game back from the wild card, the Cardinals are going to be buyers at the midseason, which we always want. We always want our team going for it. But I think the way it was framed is that they're going to be buyers, but it's going to be no different than what we've gotten year after year after year. He said a 5th starter type and a right-handed bat who can sometimes play center field.
Yeah.
So it seems like we're looking at augmenting the 25th and 26th man on the roster rather than the, top 10 or so. So I don't know. I mean, the Jordan Montgomery trade was pretty big, in recent memory. So like there are versions of this that can still be pretty exciting. But I'm projecting the Cardinals to be buyers, but be muted buyers like they always are, and hoping that 84 wins or so gets into the playoffs is my projection.
Yeah. And this is where the criticism of Mozeliak comes in. It's the half steps that I think we all find extremely frustrating. Why not push a little bit harder and get a player that could actually impact the big league club? Because I believe you have a 5th starter in the minor leagues. I believe that you have a right-handed bat that can play center field sometimes in the minor leagues. Now, if they wanted to push a little bit more, I brought up Brent Rooker a couple of times on this podcast. Seems highly like there was a report in the from Michael Bowman in the Athletic today. It seems highly likely that he is going to be traded at some point this year. JJ Bleday would be another interesting name. And I'm just picking on the Athletics right now because they're terrible. I don't think the Cardinals, it would absolutely shock me to learn that the Cardinals are seriously in on Luis Robert Jr. But a name like that would obviously go a very long way.
Well, that's the dream one, right?
Yeah.
And that's the one that it certainly seems like Robert has a shot at being traded this midseason.
Agreed. Yeah.
We're already starting to get articles about the White Sox ask. They have apparently said they want to receive a package similar to what the Nationals received for Juan Soto.
Yeah.
Which, of course, you would posture that way. I forget how they exactly outlined it, but they made similarly lofty statements around trading Dylan Cease. And while they did end up getting a pretty good package for Dylan Cease, it was not nearly what they asked for in their initial the sort of haggling, the public haggling that happens with this sort of thing. But I would expect a Luis Robert to be an incredibly high price. Yeah. I mean, when healthy, he is arguably a top 10, top 20 player in all of baseball. And, health is health. There's only so much you can do about it. He obviously has been hurt to start the season, but he's back now and he's been playing pretty well. And last year he had an incredible season. So I think they will get a lot for him. And I don't think the Cardinals will be the team to do it, though.
Yeah,
man, that would be the dream.
A couple other players I think are worth talking about right now. Taylor Ward, I think, would be a really interesting fit for the Cardinals. And obviously, the Angels are not competitive this year. He's getting on the older side. Would make sense to move him. The Angels need kind of everything. So that's an obvious matchup from my point of view. And I kind of like Taylor Ward. He's got a little pop. He's an okay fielder. He's not like an all-star player, but he's not, he's above average, I think, everywhere.
Yeah, he's incredibly streaky. When
Yeah.
he is on, he is one of the better power hitters in the game. And then he will go a month without doing anything. Kind of like what we've seen with Nolan Gorman, but in the outfield.
Another player I want to call out is Brian De La Cruz, who is a outfielder for the Marlins. And he is, this I think is a much more realistic target. He is 27 years old. And if you look at his batted ball profile, he hits the ball really, really hard. He sprays it all over the ballpark, but he hasn't really fully put it together yet. And he is not a great fielder, but he's a right-handed bat that crushes the ball consistently. And I think he could be gotten for not that much. And this is a guy that could take at bats in the corner outfields, maybe start in center and definitely start at DH.
Yeah.
But I think something like that would make a lot of sense for the Cardinals, especially if this is what the offense is. And then, like I said, why not try Roberse? Why not try Kloffenstein? Why not try Tink Hens? Why not try somebody else who's having a good year right now? We just saw, oh my God, I'm forgetting his name. The guy that goes down from the left-hand side, college pitcher. He really sidearms it.
Are you talking about for the Cardinals?
Yeah. Cooper Jerpy just got promoted to AAA. Maybe he's on the radar. But
I suspect we're going to see a Hintz promotion here pretty soon, but maybe not to the major leagues.
Yeah. So I don't know. That's kind of how I would attack it. I would love for the Cardinals to go get somebody better than that. I would love for them to aim higher. I would love for them to get a Brent Rooker and I don't know, some higher end pitcher that we're not talking about right now, but seems unlikely. And I don't know. We'll see what happens.
Yeah. So we're going to be increasing our coverage of the trade deadline as we get closer and closer. As usual, it will likely be a very highly interesting, but ultimately dull trade deadline for the St. Louis Cardinals. But who knows? We'll see. I personally, like I said before, I hope that we are still in competition in 6 weeks and the Cardinals go and look to increase anywhere, even if it is on the margins. It's more fun than selling, although there is some fun in selling. But I'm hopeful that this is a competitive year all year.
I'm hoping that the Cardinals are feeling a little bit of pressure to actually make a change and to bring in somebody who can facilitate that.
Yeah, you got to wonder, though, if your head of baseball operations, the guy who's ultimately responsible for all of this, already says that he's leaving soon. Does he feel that pressure to win like someone who is newer to the job would? I don't know. Probably not, right? If you're legitimately not worried about losing your job over your team's performance, I know people have motivations from different areas, and it doesn't. You don't just have to be motivated by fear.
Not like this podcast.
I don't know, just something interesting.
So this is me just like speculating and reading the tea leaves and pulling it out of my butt, really. But I get the sense that the DeWitts don't like losing. And I think that's where the pressure will come more. I think that the DeWitts, I could see them essentially directing Mozeliak to do what he needs to do within X. This is the amount of liability you can let fly out the door, and what that looks like. I have a feeling that they're very involved.
All right, we're really feeling the pressure this summer. We really want you to make a splash at the trade deadline this year. We're going to increase the budget by $2.5 million. Go out there and do something big.
Yeah, go get yourself half of Kike Hernandez. I don't who makes that money.
Yeah.
No one?
I don't know. No one.
Yeah.
All right. Well, like I said, we'll be keeping an eye on this all summer. So we've got a little bit more to talk about, but before we do, we want to remind our listeners that this show is supported on Patreon. If you enjoy the show and the time and effort that we put into. It might not feel like there's a lot of effort when you listen to the quality of the show, but it at least takes our time to bring this to you. And if you want to support that,
The show's good, Nate.
Consider joining our patreon.com/talkingaboutbirds. It's cheap and easy and a great way to show your support for us and join a cool community of cool people. We've got our private Discord that every patron gets access to called the Bird Scored. We're having a good time in there, chatting about the Cardinals, watching games together, just having an all together good time away from shitty other social media. We also have shirts and a bunch of other cool perks you get at various levels. So check it out. We really appreciate all of our patrons. And if you're considering it, we appreciate you as well. If you can't join, you could leave us a review on your favorite podcast platform. That also really does help. Hambone, if people want to find our content otherwise, where should they go online?
I'm so glad you asked, Nate.
Wow.
You could find us on Twitter at Talk About Birds. You can also find us on Instagram at Talking About Birds. 2 different social media handles for the same podcast. You can email us questions, thoughts, concerns to talkaboutbirds@gmail.com. This show is available on Spotify. This show is also available on YouTube. You can listen to us there. We got a TikTok. We'd love for you to go look at our TikTok and double tap our milky white faces.
No, I don't think we do want that. And also, I think we're all going to do the rest of the show in this bad voice you're doing.
Yeah, I thought it would be pretty annoying while I'm doing this part of the show. We have T-shirts. You can check out the website. You can check out the Patreon. You can do all that crap at talkingaboutbirds.com. And of course, you can call us and leave a voicemail or send us a text message to 848-48-BIRDS. That's 848-482-4737.
I want to take a moment. I meant to do this last week, and I forgot. So sorry, but we had a listener of the show who, you know who you are, took a time out of their life to both tweet at us and call and leave a voicemail to make sure that we saw Adam Wainwright had posted his absurd set list to Twitter.
Yes.
And I just want to say thank you. It's good that we have someone on the ground for this sort of thing. Wainwright's set list was indeed hilarious. And yeah, I just thank you. This is the type of support we need as a podcast. And it's good to know that our listeners are out there keeping their fingers on the pulse.
Do we have any sense of why he put the keys of the songs next, like on the set list? I've never seen that done.
Yeah, I did ask. We have I'm not being a big country music fan. I didn't understand this, and I asked. We have a friend who is a big country music fan, and she explained at least what she believes was the reason why. And if it wasn't clear what Ben just said, on Adam Wainwright's set list, after every song, it had what key the song is in, which is really funny to me because like I've played a million shows. I know a lot of people who've played a lot of shows. You just know the song, you know.
You would think,
like, yeah. Or if you are doing like if you're a traveling like a set. What's what I'm looking for? Like a
session
musician. You know, you might need something like that. But generally your touring band has practiced the hell out of this thing and they don't need set list, or they don't need to know what key, they don't need sheet music or whatever. But apparently it's just sort of like a traditional country thing where he was playing almost his entire set was covers. And so it can be a reminder because some of these people have played these songs for 25 years and it's typically in A, but because Adam Wainwright, his voice makes it sounds a little better if the song is played in G. It's just like a reminder, like you're a country musician, you've played this song for 30 years. Don't play it how you normally play it in G instead. So there is like a practical reason.
Yeah.
It's probably something that doesn't exist anymore and people just do it because it's like tradition, but that stood out to me as well.
Funny. All right. Well, the more you know.
yeah. But yeah, I mean, Wainwright has like 6 songs, so the whole set list was mostly a bunch of just country standards, which is a lot of country music anyway. You know?
Yeah, I've been an all-star all my life.
All right, we got a couple series coming
doesn't he
up.
have that song about like you got to listen to your mama and
yeah, I mean
mind,
it's all the
mind your daddy's hand or something, some weird shit like that.
Yeah, it's a yeah. I honestly I listened to the full album a couple times because I wanted to like, and it's not for me, Ben.
Yeah, it's
me too. All right, we got a couple series. Cardinals are going to Chicago for 3 games, 3-day games, old school Chicago style.
Hell yeah, brother.
Slap some sport peppers on it because this one's Chicago style.
Sport pickles.
Sport peppers.
Wow.
Get some celery salt on it. This baby's Chicago style, 3-day games. How you feeling about this series against El Cabos?
We love it, folks. We really do. No, of course I'm excited. It's the Cubbies. It's the summer. It's Wrigley. It's day games, old style. The wind blowing in, the wind's blowing out, and the Cubbies are a bit vulnerable right now. The Cubbies are as effective as the Cardinals have been. And, you know, I think we're probably going to say this for every show for the next 6 weeks. It's a really important series. This is as weighty as a June Cubbies series can be, I would say, for these two teams and drawing that line in the sand. And the Cubbies have, you know, they are what they are. They're great defense that still exists. The offense is pretty light. And they have a couple of really good pitchers at the top. Outside of that, this team is what, you know, there's not that much of a difference over the last few years we've watched them. Other than I would say Seiya Suzuki is healthy and effective. But they're not that scary of a team. They play crisp baseball, and the Cardinals really got to go in there and shove.
Yeah, you never know what a series in Chicago is how it's gonna go, but you got to beat the Cubs. If you wanna make the playoffs, they got to beat the Cubs.
Yeah. Trying to think. Christopher Morel has kind of had a rough go, although he's still got some nice power. Mike Tauchman has been a nice surprise for them. He's played really well. That's about all I got for the Cubbies.
Yeah. After that, the Cardinals head to Miami for 3 games against the Marlins. This is a team they should beat up on. The Cardinals should have beat up on the Rockies. Didn't quite do that. But they should beat up on this team. We've seen them already this year. They're a bad team. They basically every part of their team that was good has collapsed, and they are bad. Even some of their pitching, like Jesus Luzardo, he's really struggled recently. There really hasn't been a part of this team that you would say is like really strikes fear in you. They've already done one of the biggest trades of the season, getting rid of their best hitter. You mentioned Brian De La Cruz. He's there.
Little scouting opportunity for Cardinals fans and maybe Mozilla.
There you go.
Jazz Chisholm is having an okay year, a down year. Jake Berger having a down year. Tim Anderson having a down year. Josh Bell having a bad year or a down year. I mean, it's all up and down. Their best player this season has been Ryan Weathers, who wasn't even supposed to make the opening day roster, but he has been their best player up until this point. He is injured, so the Cardinals will miss him.
Yep.
They have a couple of exciting arms in the bullpen. Tanner Scott is legit. And then outside of that, Vidal Brujan is kind of a fun. He's been a lauded prospect for years and years. It's finally getting some opportunity to play with Luis Arias being gone. So that's exciting, but he hasn't been effective really. This team sucks. We got Skippy. Yeah. That's always exciting, but it's a bad team with no real future. I mean, maybe if all the pitching can get healthy and they can actually start hitting the ball over the wall, they can turn the ship around. But they're not. And I guess I'll just plug it again. Watch some Brian De La Cruz at bats, and maybe we can put it out there into the Twitterverse and whatnot, and get him on this team. I think that would be fun. I
am a big fan of Jazz.
Oh yeah, he's
not just the music, but
he's that you made when you said you're so you suck.
And let's do some physical comedy here on the podcast.
Yeah, that's comedy. That was. I would also call that comedy.
I like Jazz, and he's been heating up a little bit recently. But outside of that, there's not much going on the team.
Yeah.
Maybe the Cardinals could trade for Jazz. That'd be fun.
That would be a blast. I would love that.
Yeah. All right. So 2 series against, we've been saying the Cardinals have a pretty low strength of schedule for the next month or so. Here we go. This highlights it. So they got to win these games.
You got to eat, big dog. Woof, woof.
You got woof, woof. All right, let's do a little bit of league news. Not a lot of what's going on, but let's hit some of the big stuff.
Yeah, we're talking trades, and the Blue Jays and the Dodgers have made a trade. The Dodgers have acquired Hall of Famer's son, Cavan Biggio, from the Blue Jays. I find this to be pretty interesting. Cavan Biggio is a guy that you could knock his bat out of his hands. A really light bat, but walks and has good defensive versatility. The Dodgers seem to always make the right move. I'm very curious to see how this plays out for them, and just kind of always fun to have a trade to look at and talk about and discuss.
Yeah. Anytime the Dodgers trade for someone, you're a little bit like, all right, what's going on here? It's like when the Rays trade for someone, you're like, okay, what are they seeing? And Biggio at times over the years has been pretty well regarded, and has he looked like a real power speed threat, and the power just hasn't really been there. And then he's the Blue Jays have had a relatively stacked lineup for quite a while now, so he's struggled for playing time. And the Dodgers, obviously one of the best teams in baseball, but they do have some gaps in their lineup, and so you can see him maybe getting some more ABs there, and maybe they figured something out, or they think they'll figure something out. They're not flawless. I mean, they went and got Lance Lynn last summer, and he was pretty bad for them. So, but generally speaking, when they target someone, it seems very, very purposeful.
They definitely,
so we'll see.
They have a plan, and it is funny, how successful they've been this year, and some of the names they have on their team. But Gavin Lux and Chris Taylor have essentially been black holes for them this year.
Yeah,
Chris Taylor has a -9 OPS plus right now, which.
Yeah, he's been one of the worst players in baseball this year.
It's wild. Now, of course, they have Mookie Betts, Shohei Ohtani, Freddie Freeman, and Will Smith at the top. And I don't know if you saw what Teoscar Hernandez did over the weekend, but that was impressive.
Yeah.
So they're fine. But it's interesting move. They need a little bit of help,
but they're a team that, as I've said, wants to win.
Yeah.
So they're already going in and tinkering and adding on the margins and whatnot. And again, who knows if this works? It wasn't a particularly big or expensive deal for them. But Biggio is not nobody. Yeah. He's had some hype behind him. So this could be the post hype, sort of thing that happens.
The Dodgers have done it before and been very successful. While we're talking about the Dodgers, did you see that Kike Hernandez was doing an on-field interview during a game over the weekend, and while Dontrell Willis, the broadcaster, was asking him a question, Kike made an error?
No, I did not see that. I've been wondering if that would happen. It seemed inevitable that it would happen.
It was extremely awkward, especially as Dontrell tried to make a joke after Kike made the error, and made me to feel uncomfortable. I don't really care about the on-field interviews. Like Burley being mic'd up was really fun because he's funny.
His was great,
but I don't know. It got like that feeling that you get from watching the BBC version of The Office, like the secondhand uncomfortableness. Yeah.
I didn't see it, so I can't speak to it. But it did seem inevitable that this is going to happen. They're talking to defensive players. Plays happen. And it wouldn't surprise me if people start turning it down, if that is the case. Yeah. But generally speaking, I've really enjoyed it. The Burley one was a lot of fun. I think what matters is the length of the inning, because there have been a couple of times where the inning is just dragged on, and you can tell the broadcast also is just like, what do we do? And so, it's kind of a risk reward there. the Burley inning was short enough. Got a fun, like, watch this, boys, as he made a catch. Like, there's some really cool stuff in it. Him like, where are you guys finding these things? Was really funny. So I personally think it's good. I enjoy it. I think it's like baseball's so stiff. Getting these guys in these situations is good. But yeah, you're obviously running the risk of basically what just happened.
And then other news, the quote-unquote best team in the National League has lost their catcher. JT Realmuto goes on the IL and will have knee surgery. Should be out for about a month and a half. The Phillies are in a spot where it probably won't matter, but a star player going down for a significant amount of time. So we'll see how they handle that. And that's all I got for league news this week.
Yeah, it does start to stack up. Just losing JT Realmuto is probably not a huge deal, though he's very, very good. But yeah, it starts to add up. And I was surprised to see only a month and a half.
Too, especially for a catcher.
Knee surgery. Yeah. Any sort of knee surgery, and he's a catcher, and they're only saying a month and a half. I was pretty surprised by that.
Way.
So we'll see. All right. So this year, just like last year, I don't remember them doing it before, but The Athletic have been doing these player polls, these anonymous player polls. Have you seen this, Ben?
I've seen this. I've heard about it, and I've read about it.
Okay. Well, I thought it would be fun to, as sort of our game here. If you've seen some of them, well, I guess this will just be a memory test for you. But I thought they were interesting in general. I took three of the polls, and we're going to talk through them. I'm going to have you guess, the answers, the outcomes from these polls in another edition of Who Charted.
Who Charted?
Nailed the sound
right.
that
We're
time.
Well for one.
Yes.
Yeah.
I was practicing before we got on the record. I take this very seriously, Hambone. Okay. So the first one was, again, these are anonymous questions asked to big league players. Putting aside their stats and going solely on vibes, who do you most want on your team? So putting aside stats, we're just talking vibes. Who do you want on your team?
I feel like it's got to be one of those Philly boys. Who do you want most on your team? Or Mookie. Who doesn't want to hang out with Mookie? Shohei seems cool. Trout's weird. Harper might be too intense for some guys. Mookie's kind of like, he's doing the podcast. He's kind of, I'm going to go with Mookie Betts, number one.
You got it. Mookie Betts is number one. I think that one is pretty clear. Do you want to guess anyone else on the list?
Yeah, Shohei. I'm going to put him up there.
Ohtani, number two.
I'm feeling Harper is on the list probably as well.
So Harper is tied with a bunch of people for third.
Harper. Is Kyle Schwarber on the list? I feel like people like Kyle Schwarber.
Schwarber is one of the other guys tied for third.
Judge?
Judge is one of the other guys. You've gotten three of the four people tied for third. You're very effectively working your way down the list. Can you I'll give you one more guess for the other guy on third, and then I'll read you the rest of them.
Guy on third. It's not going to be a Cardinal. Working my way.
There is one Cardinal on this list, but they were not in third.
One Cardinal on the list. Okay. Was Newt the one Cardinal on the list? Oh, he's probably not popular enough yet.
Yeah.
Adley Rutschman could be up there, although he might be too young, and baseball players are weird about that kind of stuff. No. Oh, McCutchen would make a lot of sense. People like McCutchen. No, it's players who are more successful than that. That's the people I've been listening. Freddie Freeman. What about Freddie?
Freeman is not on the list.
What an asshole.
So, the one missing for third was Acuna.
Oh, okay. Fair enough.
Tied for fourth, you've got Trout, Marcus Semien, Lance Lynn, the one Cardinal, and Willie Adames.
All right.
Apparently cool dude. And then tied for fifth, another good list, Jose Altuve, Orlando Arcia, Garrett Cole, Kike Hernandez, Francisco Lindor, and Garrett Stubbs.
Oh, wow. Backup catcher. That's funny.
Yeah, so Stubbs just must be a real cool dude.
Like okay, good for him.
Yeah. All right. Opposite, sort of. What organizations have bad reputations among players?
Let's go Oakland A's.
Yeah. So Oakland, clear and obvious, number one overall. They had the most votes by a mile.
And then I think number two, it's either the White Sox or the Rockies. The White Sox have it's more chaotic there. Rockies are just dumb. I'm going to go White Sox and then Rockies.
White Sox are 2. Rockies are 4.
Who is worse than the Rockies? Detroit, no. Boston's been kind of chaotic. The Nationals have been bad. Miami sucks, and they have sucked as long as I can remember. Cincinnati kind of... I don't really love how they treat players, especially recent history. That's a tough one. I'm going to guess Miami.
Miami is 7th on the list. You're missing. I'm going to read them to you. I got one more question after this. So it was Athletics, White Sox, Angels.
Oh, duh. Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. Rockies, Mets, which is hilarious. Pirates, which was a little surprising. Marlins, Rays, Padres, Yankees, Nationals, and Royals in that order.
Okay. I would not guess Rays, but I guess it either works for you or it doesn't work for you.
Well, the article included comments, and several people mentioned the Rays, and that from a player perspective, it's kind of horrible to play for the Rays. And I get that. Like, winning is obviously awesome, but there's basically rarely anybody who's a full-time guy, and the moment you become valuable, you're traded to another team.
Makes sense.
Fair enough. Yeah. Something interesting though: the Orioles, Red Sox, Guardians, Tigers, Astros, Giants, Mariners, and Cardinals were all mentioned once. So at least one person
that makes sense
mentioned the and then finally, which team would you sign with if contracts, state taxes, and rosters were not a factor?
Well, that seems easy. The top 3 teams have to be Philadelphia, Atlanta, and Dodgers in some order. I'm going to go Dodgers, Atlanta, Philadelphia.
You've got two of the 3. It's Atlanta first overall, and then Boston.
Oh.
And then LA, the Dodgers. And then it goes Rangers, Yankees, Cubs, Padres, Phillies.
I figured the Phillies would be higher up
so
there.
I imagine Phillies, you don't want to get batteries and shit thrown at you or whatever. The Phillies fans, if they like you, it's great. But
they don't. They kick your ass. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Fair enough.
Speaking of the Phillies, I've talked about this podcast a fair bit on this show, but The Dollop, a show that I really love, they just did an entire episode on Curt Flood.
Oh, cool.
Which obviously more known as a Cardinal, but there's some interaction with the Phillies there too. The show is pretty vulgar, and so it's not necessarily something that I recommend to kids or whatever. It is a comedy show first and foremost, but it's a comedy history podcast, and they just did a full 1.5-hour episode fully on the life and history of Curt Flood, and it's incredible. It honestly made Curt Flood now one of my favorite Cardinals. I think we all know that he is sort of the reason why there's free agency. But what he went through in order to accomplish that and what it ultimately did to him, I don't think a lot of people know. Just a really fascinating person who was both a ball player and an artist, a painter and sculptor, and a bunch of interesting stuff. So definitely recommend the show if you're interested in learning more about Curt Flood and the history of free agency. But again, remember, this is a comedy podcast that's kind of vulgar, so it's, there's all of that too. But I highly recommend it. Okay. That's going to be it for this week. So thanks everyone for listening. Hopefully you found the coverage of the Blogger podcast today interesting. We certainly appreciate being a part of it. And a lot of that is really because of our listeners. So thank you all for listening to the show and supporting it. We'll be back next week. Hopefully Cardinals finish this series against the Pirates well and have some good games against the Cubbies. Ben, you still got to wear your Dansby Swanson shirt. We got to figure out a date and time for that. I think it should be at Busch Stadium, so we'll have to figure that out. And that'll do it. So we'll be back next week. And until next week,
I didn't want to say this until after the event, but I'm glad you did not request me to wear it to the Blogger event. So thank you for that. And
I didn't
want to even bring it up until after.
I know. I thought about doing that, but I thought, you know what? This is our first time doing this. So I'm not going to make him do it. But I do think it would be funny if this event keeps happening and it's something that we are invited to every year. If we could make some sort of stupid bet every year that results in someone having to make a fool of themselves at Blogger Day in front of John Medallion or whoever it is, that would be fun.
We'll figure that one. All right. Thanks, everyone. Bye. Benny Baklava.
Wow. Eating sugar.
Did you say Pete Sugar?
I said eating sugar.
Oh. I was like, Pete Sugar is a sweet name. We just got to
Pete Sugar is a sweet
know somebody
name.
named Pete.